Hey, I'm Warren Sprouse. This is the Bible Forum. Glad that you're here. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We look at life through a biblical lens. We're looking at signs of the times. We try to do this periodically. It used to be about a monthly or quarterly kind of event, but now it just comes every day on every week. We heard just this week how that J.P. Morgan is beginning to restrict all cash withdrawals from their ATM machines. They have begun doing this only for non-customers several weeks ago, but now they're doing it even to customers. The bank feels that it's prudent to set withdrawal limits on ATMs, and they did that after they identified some very large cash withdrawals from non-customers. What is the significance of this biblically? Well, it's been talked about so much, it's hard to imagine somebody who doesn't know the answer to that question. The day is coming, the Bible predicts, during the Great Tribulation, when nobody is going to be able to buy or sell unless they have the mark of the beast. And there's speculation, and there's movies, and there's books, and there's all sorts of things about what that is, what that means. The Bible does describe it as 666. That is code, and nobody quite knows what that means exactly. It's been suggested a number of different things. My pet theory is that it's a 3-digit code that can be placed at the beginning of any of your credit cards, any of your ATM transactions, whatever it might be. We're doing all of this digital money moving, so to just put this prefix in front of it would give you access. Without it, you can't even get to your own money. We are watching a banking industry that is shrinking. They tell us there's only 5 central banks, is it? I don't even think central is the right word, but that all banking is centered in 5 large banks. Just this week, Wells Fargo was hit with a multi-million-dollar fine because employees within the bank were opening multiple accounts for customers without their knowledge. There was no indication that in each case that these bank accounts were being used in some nefarious way, but the idea that they were opened and you didn't know about it was enough to cause the bank to suffer a tremendous penalty. I talked to a lady just this week who opened a bank account. I didn't ask her which bank, but she had that experience. She got 2 accounts, 2 cards. And she was asking me, what does that mean? What do I do? And I said, you go back to the bank and you say, I want you to cancel this card and cancel this account. Well, why? Because somebody gave it to me and I wasn't asking for it. Now, she did know, and she did say that the fellow asked her to sign the papers twice. And she pointed out to him, these are identical papers. He said, yeah, I know, but you have to do that. And she got 2 cards, both of them in her name. What's that? They claim that this is the banks pushing people to get accounts open, and they're trying to meet their quota. They want everybody with a credit card, and they want them with those little square chippies on them. You see those things? They've got a name for them now, where you stick it in the machine, you sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait. I shared with you a number of months ago, maybe a year ago now, when this thing started coming out, folks were saying that what that little square chip does is it puts the responsibility on the merchant if anything goes wrong, as opposed to the bank that is giving you the card and backing it up. And each time I have shared that with merchants, they've been shocked and they're not happy. They were not thinking about it. There were a couple that said, yeah, we know. But they were the bigger outfits, the smaller mom and pops and whatever, not so much. These are all harbingers of a coming global economic society. David Daoud, an Israeli, a research analyst at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, told a website called jns.org that the situation along the Golan Heights is troubling. You know the Golan? The Golan is in the north. It is a mountainous precipice. You can look out over the valley there. You're looking at Jordan and southern Syria. It's a beautiful sight, they say. But ostensibly, the Hezbollah operation that is cranking up is aimed at rooting out Sunni jihadists from the area that is bordering one of those cities there in the heights. And he says, assuming the operation succeeds, it's unlikely that Hezbollah and the allied forces will simply withdraw from the area. It isn't going to happen that way. What's going to happen is that they will simply take up new positions bordering Israel. So this activity is being conducted not by the Israeli forces, but by the Muslim forces on the other side. Experts think it's a ruse to bring military equipment and personnel closer to Israel for something later on. The Golan Heights sits above northern Israel. After years of Syrian-sponsored terror attacks and threats to Israel's northern cities, Israel gained control of the Golan Heights, moving military units there. After Israel briefly lost the territory during the 73 Yom Kippur War, Israel and Syria established a United Nations monitored ceasefire line in the region, with Israel taking control of the western two-thirds of the area. But in 1981, Israel essentially annexed the Golan when it extended Israeli civil law into that territory. And now the Golan is a popular destination for outdoor enthusiasts, tourists. It's famous for its wine production, hiking, skiing. The Golan Heights has not been immune to fighting in nearby Syria over the course of this current civil war. Mortar fire, rockets sporadically land in Israeli territory as the various factions move around. Most of these shells have not been directed against Israel, but they're not sure that some of them are not tests. As the chief terror proxy of Iran, Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization, has been deeply involved in the Syrian civil war since 2013, where they have fought in support of Syrian President Assad's government forces. Hezbollah's decision to involve itself in the neighboring civil war has profound consequences for the terrorist organization, both strategically and militarily. Hezbollah and Iran see no future for Syria, a Syria which is disintegrating and deciding to do exactly what the others do, and they are going to now try to take parts of Syria for themselves. Hezbollah has significantly bolstered its weapons arsenal since the last conflict with Israel in 2006. According to the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Hezbollah went to war with Israel in 2006 with around 13,000 short-range and medium-range rockets. But the Washington Institute suggests today that they could have over 100,000 rockets and missiles, including a number of long-range systems, as well as systems with improved accuracy, allowing it to strike throughout Israel and with increased precision. And because of all this, Israel has frequently hit targets relating to Hezbollah, striking weapons shipments or targeting Hezbollah leaders in order to keep the terror group from using the civil war in Syria to further grow its arsenal. There are also active groups operating in the area, such as the anti-government Free Syrian Army, the Islamic State, and Southern Front. Just last month, there was another report that Assad would be sending Hezbollah forces southward, that is, toward Israel. But with the critical Aleppo operation not proceeding as smoothly as the regime and its allies would like, and with their high casualty rate, experts are doubtful that they would take forces away from where they are to send them south. But the situation in Israel is growing ever more tense, just as conditions for Jews in Europe are becoming increasingly untenable. France, Germany, several smaller nations and cities are increasingly making it hard for Jews to stay there. And the question is always the same. What have the Jews done? What are the Jews doing that these nations, these cities, these states single them out the way they do and the way they have as long as there's been Jews on the planet? And the answer is largely nothing. They're certainly not doing what Islam is doing, and Islam continues to be tolerated, continues to be harbored and encouraged. So the question is not a political question at all. It's a question for the Bible. This entire issue is spiritual. It's not national at all. It is another movement toward the Great Tribulation, toward a time when all of the neighboring communities, cities, states, and nations around Israel come at Israel. The Bible says that she will be surrounded by her enemies at the end. That when this happens, the number of Jews in the world will have been reduced to only 1/3 the population today. The Bible says that when this happens, Jesus will come. Their Messiah will come. They will cry out to their Messiah, and he will come to save them. The Old Testament book of Zechariah says when that occurs, only 1/3 of the Jews will be saved. All the rest will have either been killed off or will be in the category of unbelievers and will die with the coming. Only 1/3. Israel is under tremendous, tremendous pressure today because the end is coming. Here in this country and around the world, we're watching other little events taking place. We are overwhelmed with the incidents, the increasing incidents of violence, horrific as it might be on a local level. Law enforcement personnel are strained to the limit because they don't know who the enemy is anymore. It could be their next door neighbor. It could be the guy, the gal they're trying to help. And people are increasingly pulling off crimes, serious crimes, in elaborate sorts of ways. Well, enter a new surveillance system. A system that has been used in military applications but is now starting to be employed by the police in certain cities. It was devised to monitor Iraqi cities and to track people who were planting explosive devices. But the technology has been improved and now it's being applied to domestic law enforcement. It's a company called Persistent Surveillance Systems. They're based out of Dayton, Ohio. The guy who thought this up is an MIT graduate who founded the Center for Rapid Product Development in the Air Force. Originally tasked with creating a battlefield observation platform to track down those responsible for planting IEDs, this man mounted a series of 6 cameras on a small airplane and dubbed the system Angel Fire. Now it is being brought into our cities. There are several cities in America who have agreed to test these things. And what they're able to do is to send up a Cessna aircraft sporting significantly upgraded cameras mounted in that Cessna that have a resolution beyond anything anybody's ever seen. Of course, there is a debate as to rights and so forth. But this system, called persistent surveillance system, has been monitoring Baltimore for months, secretly. And the system works, the experts say, frighteningly well. For example, one recent Saturday, a small plane operated by an ex-Army pilot working for persistent surveillance systems took to the skies with his camera system recording one image every second. He had been up for several hours when a call came through that a group of nuisance dirt bike riders, which had been terrorizing the city, had just hit and then assaulted an off-duty police detective. The police had been unable to catch the bikers for months, but the technicians, now watching the images in real time, were able to track this thing through the city, past street-level cameras, and after nearly 90 minutes, identify and arrest the riders. In another case, a murderer left the police with little evidence until they watched hours-old footage of a figure walking away from the scene, crossing a park, entering a house, emerging to drive away in a vehicle. Both cases brought the police not only to the perpetrators, but also their accomplices, and linked other pieces of incriminating evidence to build strong cases. The system works by snapping a series of incredibly high-resolution, wide-angle photos and digitally stitching them together. Up to 10 terabytes of data are stored per day, and the so-called video can be looked at later, zoomed in, played backwards to track the movements of suspects across the city for hours. The city of Baltimore has remained tight-lipped about the project, and it is unknown how many other cities have considered contracting with persistent surveillance systems, except we do know that Los Angeles, California, recently tried the system. But California has decided they're not going to do this sort of thing. The ACLU has gotten involved. They don't think this is such a wonderful idea. They say it may be true. There's no legal expectation of privacy while you're out in the public. The idea that every movement is being watched and recorded, is available and ready to be played back by the police or private surveillance contractors, it's just a little creepy. The French philosopher Michel Foucault wrote about a concept he called panopticon in his work entitled Discipline and Punishment. The panopticon, an all-seeing presence, enforces compliance through constant observation, and is the reason why prisons are now built around a central point of observation. Have you seen the new prisons? Well, the cells are in a big circle. The guards are in the middle. Cameras are watching everything. The next time you're out on the city street, look up, smile. The eye in the sky might be watching you.